Today on Green Tech Pulse, where we plan to make the hub for everything green tech globally, we'll be talking about something interesting, something I've never heard of before, but sounds really interesting, and that's DNA storage. We all know DNA is where the information in our body is stored. But today's guest, Erfane Arwani, this founder of Biomemory, is going
Hello.
to talk DNA storage with us. So welcome to the show.
Hello, Peter. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm fine, thank you. So I said this thing, I don't know anything about it. So can you just explain for us, for me, and for the listeners in simple terms, what DNA data storage actually is?
Yeah, DNA first is a polymer we all have in our bodies to have our genome in form of data for nature. However, DNA data storage is very different. We're using a molecule that is DNA, but we don't do genomes. Actually store data in it. So it doesn't express itself. It is just here to store data. And we do that because it's an excellent medium to store a lot of data in a tiny footprint for thousands of years without any requiring energy.
So when you say a molecule that is DNA, do you mean like it's a biological, like it's a living molecule or something?
No, absolutely not. It's not living. DNA is a molecule like wood or plastic or anything else. And it was invented by nature like other molecules. But here it's a synthetic molecule, just here to store
Okay.
data.
Okay, okay. So I know. Oh, yeah. So DNA. I think from my understanding, it's been ages. I did all that in school. I know DNA is deoxyribonucleic acid. It's like an amino acid or something like that. I can't really remember. So what you're saying is that this molecule you're talking about is built in the structure of that the DNA acid.
Yeah, exactly. So DNA is made of four different structures, the four layers, A, T, C, and Gs.
Okay.
And when you combine them into a longer molecule, you can have the base for data storage. It means successions of layers. You can store data. In computer science, you have zero and ones, but in DNA, you have ATC and Gs. And you can convert those zero and ones into ATC and Gs. That's how it works in the digital world. Then you have to make it available in the physical world. So you actually build the molecules. And to do that at Biomemory, we do that a little bit differently from other companies. We are using synthetic biology. It means that we're using petrol free consumables to manufacture the molecules.
Wow. So this is like a very long way. I know with some computers, we've gone from the floppy drive, the punch cards to the CDs, what do we, SD cards, NVMe, SSDs, and all that right now. And this is like a huge leap from, I think we have NVMe as probably the latest now to this kind of storage. So what's inspired you to look at DNA to follow this path using DNA as a solution for data storage?
Yes, it's a very good question. First, we have to recognize the environmental challenge posed by data centers all over the world. For example, in Ireland, you now we know that data centers that consume 20% of the electricity of the country.
Wow.
So DNA has the potential to be a very efficient solution to lower that a lot. And static biomemory is an opportunity to bridge IT and biotech to address a real world problem.
I think that's an interesting statistic you shared about Ireland. using 20% of their power just for data centers. So now looking at this, your technology, I know a data center has like a lot of servers with their the CPU, the hard drive, whatever, whatever. So how does this technology, this DNA storage technology, how does it reduce that power consumption compared to using traditional drives on these data centers?
Sure. So when you use traditional drives or flash memories or even tapes, first you have to manufacture them. So
Hmm.
what you do is you use electronic grade solution, and it's very, very energy consuming. Then in operation, you have to um, feed them with electricity, because if you don't do that, you will lose your data. After a few weeks only, are you still here? I don't see you.
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, still here. I'm sorry. So after a few weeks of electricity to flash memories, for example, you will start to lose data. So DNA, you don't need first to have electronic grade solution. So it's very inexpensive. At Biomemory, for example, we manufacture the blocks of DNA at something that is close to the price of sugar. Then in
Wow.
operation, when your DNA is written, you don't have to give to DNA electricity because it's a molecule. It's not a charge. It's not a polarization. It means, in practical terms, that theoretically you can lower the energy consumption of by using DNA in data centers, probably but by 10,000.
Wow. 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 So this really really advanced. So now you say this storage works without electricity, and we all know. I think we've all been in that situation where, especially with external drives, you connect them to your laptop and you forget to eject them and unplug them, and all your data is lost. So how does this, when you say it works without electricity, how does this happen? Like especially when you talk about the reading, the storage, the retrieval of data. That's first. Then I think the second part of the question: how fast is storage and retrieval compared to the traditional drives?
So the first part of your question is how practically does it work, and then how does it compare to? Yes. So you have to use electricity. I mean, to write the data, you're using robotics, microfluidics, and thermal inkjets. So you use electricity just to manufacture the molecule. But when it's manufactured, then you put the molecules sealed into a preservation storage medium. Then in that, you don't need any more electricity, only when you want to read it back. But even though with those robotics, you don't consume energy like you do in the silicium world. It's very different. It's a new paradigm. And the second part of the question is how does it compare to other um, technologies, current technology, electronic technologies? Today, it's slow. It's very slow today. I have to admit, and it's a new technology. That's why it's slow. However, it scales. It scales a lot, and each year we make it progress. So today, probably it is uh, s- slower than anything else, but you still can archive a lot of things for thousands of years. But it's progressing in a way that in 3 to 4 years, it will be okay for cold storage. And then probably within the end of the decade and the next decades, um, it will be something comparable to electronics and in some aspects faster. When you are in the molecule world, you don't have the constraints of electronics. It means it can scale a lot more. And we predict that by the end of the decade, we'll be able to write with one single appliance more than 1 petabyte per day, which is very, very fast.
Wow. That's interesting. So I think you
Yeah,
mentioned
yeah, it's
storage
great.
for thousands of
Very
years. Do you? Yeah. So you mentioned storage for thousands of years. Do you mean that's how long the data, when written on these drives, do you mean that's how long it can last?
Yeah, it's a very minimum because DNA is very sturdy, it's very durable. If you preserve DNA from light, oxygen, and water, you can preserve it for thousands of years minimum. But if you replicate a little bit the molecules, uh, probably you can keep the data for 1, 2, 3 million years,
Whoa.
which is a lot more than humanity. So it's very good for space exploration. And we have this
Wow.
project in mind. We'd like to store all the books we have been writing, humankind, I mean. So it's 138 million books since the beginning of humanity. And we
Wow.
think that we can fit all those books in a single petabyte. And we want to send this petabyte to Mars. It means this is a way to preserve our humanity, or the knowledge of humanity, for thousands of years, maybe millions of years. And if it happens we have a prime on Earth, we'll be able to still get our knowledge back.
Wow. So now another thing you talked about was the footprint, the size of this compared to traditional storage. I know currently, I know I have memory cards of about 1 terabyte, this very small.
Mhm.
Comparing with this biomemory with the DNA storage, how much memory can get in compared to a traditional drive?
So further theory, DNA is very different from electronics. It means that in 1 gram of DNA, you can theoretically store 215 petabytes of data.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, yeah, it's very dense. It means that in a car, the volume of a car, you could store everything. I mean, everything
Yeah.
from data centers to your iPhone to everything available on Earth. But then you have to be more practical. You need to access the data. So we're building an appliance that fit into a rack. So it's a 19 inches rack, very standard in data centers. And in this rack, you will be able to store 1 exabyte, which is 1,000 petabytes. It's enough to preserve our data centers and the energy consumption.
So that means we probably will be having huge data centers being fit into a laptop by the time this is out.
It means that you'll be able to have smaller data centers all over the world. That's the equivalent of the small nuclear reactors we plan to build everywhere, and not we, the humanity. So I think it would be good for cities to have smaller data centers all over the world, relying on new technologies like DNA data storage.
Okay. So I think another thing people listening to this would that will cross the minds of people listening to this when they hear DNA storage. Is it safe? Because they might have this thing because the DNA is a biological substance. So I know you mentioned it's a molecule, but for the listeners, yeah, is it safe?
Yeah. So for us, data security is paramount. I'm a computer scientist, and security for me is very, very important. So we have designed a process with multiple layers of protection. And first, DNA is inherently offline. That's what we call in computer science air gap storage. So it's immune to cyber attacks. Then encoding and decoding, proprietary with us. So it's very, very difficult to hack it. Still, if you can access the DNA, you can encode and decode it. We added biological protections in a way that our DNA, even if you corrupt it, even if you do anything with it, you can't get proteins from it. So we can take our DNA, put it in, I don't know, in living cells, and the living cells won't be able to do anything with it. Only copy it if needed. That's all of it. It means it's not a threat to nature. It's not a threat to operators in data center. No living cells, nothing.
Okay, so now I remember earlier you mentioned that you have a plan of putting a lot of data on these DNA cards and sending it over to Mars. So apart from that, what are some other unexpected applications of this technology that you've seen as you're building?
Yes. So the first applications of this DNA data storage will be able to store forever. So smaller amount of data because our technology is not ready to write petabytes every day. So it will be able to write gigabytes every day starting next year. So with that, it's possible to store those gigabytes forever. Then progressively, we'll be able to write more from gigabytes to terabytes, from terabytes to petabytes. So it's a good way for cold storage. And then in parallel, we will be improving writing and reading speeds. So it'll be a very good solution, a mainstream solution for data storage. Not only cold storage, but some parts of the hot storage. Because latency, accessing time to access the first byte of data will remain slow. Definitely slow. It's a molecule, it's slow. However, after accessing the first byte, when you want to read the whole file, it'll be faster because it's a molecule. So you don't have the constraint of electronics, a bus of electronics. You don't have it. You can parallelize a lot more than in electronics. Meaning you'll be able to read back large chunks of data, for example, to train your LLM. So that's how we envision speeds and practical use of DNA data storage in the coming years.
Okay, so I know this thing went from an idea, probably maybe a research paper or something, or a business plan, to the point where you started building it and all that. At what point did you realize that this idea you have about using DNA for storage is actually going to work? It's actually usable.
Um, so first, it wasn't my idea.
Okay.
The idea came from Richard Feynman in the 50s, so
Oh.
physician. And then practically how we do it with synthetic biology and biosourcing came from my co-founders that are they are researchers here in Paris at Sorbonne University and CNRS. But then we had to think about it, how to make it scalable and available in data centers. So I knew from the beginning that it would work, but how to make it work like in the coming years instead of in the coming decades. So what I did with my team is to reach out to people that are able to uh, industrialize what we have. We have a very good process to build the molecules, but we are going from a process to hardware. So we hired people from the hardware industry, and we partners with different companies in the hardware industry to build the appliance. And that's what we're now doing, building the appliance to make it available starting next year. Not
Hmm.
available to everyone. It will be available for first partners. We are today signing contracts with different cloud providers, but we will have a first very good step next year.
Okay, so now when you try to explain this DNA storage to people, to investors, to partners, to even people like me, what is the biggest thing that they assume about it that you know is wrong, but you see people keep saying?
Um, I'm a little bit sad about it because they people I'm talking with, they all understand how does it work because it's like Legos. I mean, it's not very difficult. However, it happened that only the new generation is agreeing that sustainability is very important. So when I'm talking to old generations, what they only want, most of them, not all of them, but most of them, is money. However, when I'm talking to new generations, they also want money, but they want more sustainability because they want a world for them that is habitable. So, my strategy when I'm talking to investors is to talk with new generations. So, more newcomers, analysts, and
Hmm.
what they do for biomemory, uh, they make it a very, very good project inside investment companies. So I'm
Wow.
helping them designing slides for investment committees, and they help me to put words that are acceptable for partners, older people, and then it works. But regarding the science, regarding the technology, when you take a little bit of your time trying to understand, it's very easy. It's like Legos.
Okay, so now talking about sustainability, which is the main topic of this podcast, where do you see this technology in the probably the next 10 years, especially with the impact on the environment? I know you've mentioned a lot of things about the size, the current data centers and co. So where do you see it in the next 10 years, and what excites you most about its potential going forward?
So within 10 years, I see this kind of technology to be probably mainstream um, because we need it. We need the technology. We don't have anything else. Electronics doesn't work anymore. We don't have enough. If you want to innovate, have AI, store whatever you want to store, you don't have enough factories in the world to manufacture hard drives and flash memories.
Hmm.
It's absolutely impossible. And I'm not the only one telling that. Everyone is. So you need a new technology. And today, what people are working on is DNA. So we don't have a choice. Or we have the choice to, stop innovation. So probably we don't want to stop innovation. You still want healthcare and new things to help you live better. So it will be mainstream with or without biomemory. And what we want is to be recognized as a global leader in this world. So this is how we see it. And there is this coming decade, and then afterwards. When I say that is we've been talking about storage like for since the beginning of this podcast.
Yeah.
However, what you can also do with DNA is computations. you can compute on DNA.
Hmm.
So the first part of what we're building is storage. Then the second part will be compute. And we're already working on that part. Because when cloud providers will accept DNA as a storage medium, then it will be easier to accept it as a compute medium. And then you will be able to train your AI model for like a fraction of the electricity consumption you have today with electronics. And when I say a fraction, it will be 5 orders of magnitude. It's very different,
Wow.
very very different.
Wow. Wow. So now, you said this technology allows messages to be stored for very long periods of time. So, um, out of curiosity, if you could save a message today on this medium to be read in the next 1,000 years, what would that message be?
Because DNA is very dense and you can store a lot of data in a very small amount of DNA. The message would be, please read and all the books just after this message.
Wow. So now, for listeners who are intrigued, they are interested in this technology, they've read about, they've heard, listened to this podcast, they want to learn more about it. I know you said this technology was proposed by Feynman back in the 50s. So for listeners who want to learn more about how it works, the everything, what resources can you recommend for them to maybe read up more and get more in touch with it?
Sure. A good start would be to go to a website from the DNA Data Storage Alliance. And this alliance was built by Microsoft, Illumina, Western Digital, big players. And we're part of this alliance. We're today a board member. And on this alliance, you will find books describing how does it work and the challenges and everything that is needed to have a good start. I have to say that this alliance today is part of the SNIA, and the SNIA is a big organization that is regrouping all the storage and memory players in the world, from Samsung to IBM and NEC, everyone.
Okay, so the DNA Data Storage Alliance. So that's where we can go to learn more. I think I'll go there too, so I can just get up to date on this new technology. So for listeners who want to connect with you to learn more about you and biomemory or anything else, what's the best way they can reach you?
The best way to reach us is LinkedIn,
Okay.
because we post regularly, and we post about DNA data storage and the clients. So it's a good way, a good approach to learn more. Probably in the future there'll be a newsletter, but from biomemory perspective, LinkedIn is enough.
Okay. Okay, so LinkedIn Biomemory. So the
Mhm.
website to the DNA Data Storage Alliance will be on the screen and in the show notes. And also the link to Biomemory's LinkedIn would be on this
Sure.
episode once it goes live. So thank you so much. I've learned so much today. I think that's why I'm enjoying doing this podcast because it's something I'm interested in. And each day I just get so much more knowledge on green tech. So thank you.
I
Thank you
have
so
the
much for
same
coming.
fun every day. It's very fun to work at Biomemory and work with tech players building
Wow.
this DNA data storage plans. Same every day. I'm here. I have fun every day, and people,
Wow.
our team, everyone's getting a lot of fun building that, and it's crazy good every day.
Wow, wow. So thank you so much for coming on and being so generous with your knowledge, your time, and sharing with us today.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So for the listeners, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, share it with someone else who enjoyed it, and see you next week. Bye for now.